We need to talk. I've got some bad news. In fact, you might want to sit down. We've all heard and used phrases like that before, and if you've been on the receiving end of them, you probably don't like them because quite often they're followed with a big negative. But they also do something extremely important. They prepare the listener for what is inevitably going to be bad news that you're about to drop. However, if you're only using these types of phrases to prepare people for negative news, then you're really missing out on one of the most powerful tools in all of language, and that is the power of pre-frames. Now, in previous videos, we talked about the importance of framing, but in many cases, pre-framing is even more important. At the very least, pre-frames set the stage for the conversation you're about to have, but more importantly, they make it easier for people to hear you and maximize receptivity. So if you want people to be open to what you say and not become defensive, then you want to master pre-frames. And that's what I want to share with you 3 types of pre-frames that you can start using today. The first type of pre-frame sets the tone, and that's because how we start a conversation pre-frames everything that follows. Notice what happens if we don't set the tone properly and we leave it ambiguous. This is when we do things like we did at the beginning of the video. You got a minute? Can we talk? I need to speak with you. And maybe that's fine, but the problem with it is when there's a lack of information, people generally begin to fill in the gaps themselves. And when they do, often they do it with the worst possible scenario. So your boss comes in and says, hey, we need to talk. Well, most people will jump to, I'm in trouble or I'm about to be fired. To avoid that problem, you want to add in the tone. It's all good, everything's fine, or we've got good news. That reduces their fear, reduces their anxiety, and allows them to be in a place they can actually have a conversation with you. Because all they're thinking in their mind is like, am I in trouble? Am I getting fired? So once you've set the tone, then you want to do number 2, which is setting the agenda. I want to talk to you about the project, or I like your thoughts on the quarterly reports. Meeting agendas do the same thing. When we write down what's important for the meeting to cover, we're saying this is what's important, this is the time frame. So we literally are handling urgency and importance at the same time. And remember, these types of conversations, these pre-frames, are for key conversations, not just for basic chit chat where the stakes are not very high. So when it's important, take the time to think about what's the tone, what's the agenda before you just jump into the conversation. Now, typically there's one more thing you want to handle before you jump into the conversation, and that is number 3, which is pre-handle objections. And this is where you want to spend most of your time. And this piece alone is really why I think pre-frames are one of the most important conversational tools that exist. And this is something you want to do before a key conversation. You want to ask yourself, what would possibly prevent this person from hearing this and having this be a productive conversation? Our goal isn't just to send a message. We want them to receive the message, to absorb it, and potentially change their behavior as a result of receiving the message. And we don't control that. We don't control any of that. All we control is how we package it when we're delivering the message. So we have to package it in the best way possible for them to receive it. Now, to pre-handle objections, you must first identify what those objections are. Even if you're not in sales, chances are you probably get objections, otherwise known as reasons or excuses, all the time. In fact, right now you might be thinking, this is too much work. Why can't I just say what's on my mind? Well, the answer is, of course you can. But for important conversations that might produce some resistance, it's probably better to put some energy up front to make it easier for the other person to hear it, because it takes way more energy to change someone's mind once they've already made it. See what I did there? See, I actually did the thing while teaching the thing. Yeah. You get it. Anyways, let's take a moment and I want you to compare 2 interactions, one with a pre-frame and the first one here without. So you say to someone, I need your help. And they respond with, I'm busy. Well, at that point, you're kind of stuck because they've already said they've made a decision, they are fixed, they're busy, and they're not going to help you. Well, instead, if we anticipated that as an objection, you can start out by acknowledging, listen, I know you're busy, and there's something that I'm dealing with right now that's really important and urgent, and I really could use your help on. Would you mind helping me out? Well, you've just stacked the deck significantly in your favor. It's not a guarantee they're going to say yes, but you took away that objection. It doesn't make sense for them to come back to you and say, I'm busy, because you already addressed that. So we're pre-handling resistance on important conversations. And in order to do this, of course, we need to do a little bit of a mind read, also known as empathy, where you step into their shoes. This is also referred to as second position. I can talk about that in another video. Let me know if you want more about that kind of information in the comments below. And you simply ask yourself, what would prevent them from receiving this in a good way? So you start by asking yourself, what could prevent them from receiving this? And then you pre-frame it. Listen, I know you're busy. Or, I know you're tired. I know you're overwhelmed, fill in the blank here. Or, I know this is your first time doing this. You can describe their current situation or perhaps even the past, or you can focus on their intention. You probably have heard people say things like, well, I didn't mean it, and looking for credit in that context. So we can assume a positive intention, because I don't assume that people have negative intention. So I know this was not your intention. I know you were trying to do the right thing. Or I know you weren't trying to destroy the company. And keep in mind, the whole goal here is to have a productive conversation. So we're getting objections out of the way as quickly as we possibly can so we can have that productive conversation with minimal resistance. And I know that some of you may be feeling a little bit nervous about doing all this, and that's perfectly normal, but just remember, it's about progress, not perfection. Now, pre-framing is amazing, but if you truly want to balance out your framing skills, take a look at the video on screen about reframing, or check out the other videos in the series. I'll put links in the description. Thanks for watching. Until next time, develop yourself, empower others, and lead by example.